Now, Higher Education and Training Minister Blade Nzimande is meeting university student leaders to discuss a decision by students not to abandon their Fees Must Fall campaign. President Jacob Zuma announced on Friday that university fees would not increase next year. Nzimande has been quoted as saying he doesn't know where the money will come from to fund students. Nzimande's spokesperson, Khaye Nkwanyana, says the minister wants academic programs to resume. Wits University Vice Chancellor Adam Habib earlier said that he was concerned that students would jeopardize the academic future of many if they continue their protest. And Wits University Vice Chancellor Professor Adam Habib now joins us in the studio. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us, and welcome. First of all, what exactly were the reasons that were given to you by students following their decision to continue with their protest action?
Well, they haven't formally communicated with us, although we do know that they had a meeting yesterday. They did decide to go ahead with the protests. They were concerned that outsourcing is something that has not been sufficiently addressed. And they said that the struggles, there's an intersectionality of the struggles, and therefore they would like to see the other demand being addressed comprehensively and fully. They are meeting today at this afternoon. They started at 2 o'clock. They are deliberating still, and they are reflecting again on this very debate about whether they should continue their protests or not. We'll wait to see what the outcome of that meeting is.
So there's nothing that is coming out yet from
They did make a provisional decision yesterday, but they said they will reconvene today, and they're debating it at this moment. And so I suspect that they may either reverse yesterday's decision or they may endorse it and continue, and we'll have to decide appropriately how to act.
The past 2 weeks must have been a hectic time for you, and with all that we saw culminating in the protests on Friday, just what is your feeling about this whole student protest campaign?
Look, it's an emotional coaster ride, actually. You know, at one point, if you asked me a week ago, did I think 0% in 2016 was possible, I would have said no. Simply because I didn't think, not because I didn't think the demand was legitimate. I think the students' demands are legitimate. I've said this before. Double-digit increases every year is impossible to sustain. Our problem was that when the state subsidy is falling, when cost drivers are running in some cases at 13% and 22% in other cases, how do you balance the books? Because my responsibility is also to balance the books. And so in a lot of ways, I agree with the demand that the students make. I just didn't think it was possible because I wasn't sure that the state would come to the party. What the students have done is in 7 days, effectively, for 2016 at least, brought the state to the party. President Jacob Zuma has said that they will not only will there be 0% increases, but the state would assist the universities to achieve that. Now that is possible. I wouldn't have imagined that possible 7 days ago, and the students have proved me wrong. We often say that universities, learning happens always. And in this way, in this sense, the students have taught us as much as normally we teach them.
Prof, does this new demand now for free quality education come as a surprise? Because Friday, the talk was 0% fee increases, and now it's free quality education. And was that matter discussed anyway in your meeting with the president?
It was, and actually our engagement is directed towards that. So we said, for instance, that the demand is to move towards free quality education for students in need. That's where the real challenge is. That's where we need to look. We're going to have to figure out how to get there, and we can't just get there in one go. We have to progressively work towards that. I will say that a lot of what the students are raising, as I've said before, are legitimate. You know, there's been a debate about these kinds of issues for years in the system. The question about the impact of below inflation subsidies, and that's not only by the vice chancellors and the academics. It was even government reports have been demonstrating it. The Ramaphosa report in 2012 made this point fairly clear. Minister Blade Nzimande on various occasions spoke about the unsustainability of this. So I am worried that there have been some criticisms of vice chancellors as if they had the latitude not to increase. We are in a difficult position. I often thought that when the massive, I've written about this actually, when the student upsurge happens, I thought I'll be on the opposite side, and I find myself on this side. Yeah. But I do think that I would like to see the students go back. I do not want students to lose this year. I think if we lose this year, we reinforce the inequality dynamics in our society. And so I'd like us to kind of address the challenges. They've got a 0% increase for 2016. There is a commitment to think how we're going to restructure the subsidy and sustainable fee regime for 2017 onwards. I've said on the issue of outsourcing, I'm happy to discuss this. I know the state is now putting a task team to work on that to see how they can assist universities. We would be prepared, I think, to, as a council, to get a team together to look at that and see how we can assist. But we can't do all of these things in one go. And that's the thing we confronted. And
talking of that, Prof, you yourself have been quoted as saying that universities are facing a shortfall of 4 billion rands in terms of funding. Now, given that there's this 0% fee increase now, where do you think you'll get the money from?
So firstly, let me address it. It's not 4 billion. I think it's something like 15 billion. So for instance, this is not my analysis. It's the report produced by Cyril Ramaphosa. And what he said, before he became deputy president, he chaired a task team established by Minister Nzimande. And what he was saying is effectively the subsidies per capita are declining. This is unsustainable. And he said that if you look at the global average, if South Africa was to be funded at the global average, then you should be funded by about 37 billion. South Africa's subsidy is 22 billion. And he was basically saying that this is just unsustainable. And I think that that is a challenge. How are we going to address this? Well, the answer to that is the state's going to help. That was the commitment on Friday with the president. We said we were fought and we were caught. I mean, let's see. The rand-dollar exchange has collapsed by 22%. Right. Research equipment has gone up 22%. Library books have gone up 36%, 22% because of the rand-dollar exchange, plus 14% VAT that has been imposed on library holdings. Electricity utility bills are up anything between 13 and 18%. Salaries are up by 7%. If you look at inflation, our subsidy is 1% below inflation. How do you balance this book? Now, the way we said is that's why the 10.5 for Wits' case. And what the government is saying is we will help the universities to be able to do this for 2016. That is why we could come to the agreement that we did on Friday. And I think it's very proactive of government to actually come to the party on this. Otherwise, you'll destroy the universities. And what we don't want is to destroy the quality of our universities. Now, the protests will definitely continue tomorrow, and I'm sure you have been in communication now with the Minister of Higher Education and Training. What is he saying about all this now? So, firstly, we don't know. We're waiting to hear. As I said, my students are meeting today. From a university point of view, either way, whatever the outcome of the student decision, our Senate will meet tomorrow. The Senate is the highest academic decision-making body. It is the custodian of the academic program. And obviously, it will deliberate on the protests and the academic program and the examination schedule tomorrow. And that's what we are going to do. I am told that we're waiting to see how things, there are some universities that have agreed to go back. Rhodes University is an example. I think Open Stellenbosch has said they're going back. The UCT, we're waiting to hear. Wits, we're waiting to hear. So there are some universities we haven't completed. We're waiting to see what the deliberations are. We, from our side, are prepared to work with all stakeholders to address whatever the remaining challenges are. But we think that we should begin the academic program. Again, say, I do not want to lose the academic year. We do not want these students, 32,000 students, to lose the ability to continue their studies, finish up their degrees. And talking of exactly that, what could then be the possible implications should the students decide that they will continue with their protest action? Well, if they were to decide that, then we're going to have to decide whether we continue with the academic program and how we sustain the academic program. And that's the big challenge that we will have, etc. I'm happy to say to the students that they are entitled to continue the protests. We allow protests, provided they allow the academic and examination program to continue. I would be happy to allow that to happen. But I do think that we cannot sacrifice the lives of 32,000 students who need to finish the degrees. If we do that, we reinforce the inequality. We have agreed both at the presidential engagement and as a university that we will restructure the academic program and restructure the examination schedule. Remember, we were quite close to finishing the academic program. Indeed. We were 4 days away or 5 days away from the final lecture. So in a lot of ways, our examination papers are scheduled, etc. We can reschedule as of now. We can reschedule to allow people to finish their degree. But we can do so for a short period of time. Otherwise, if they continue to protest and the universities can't continue, then sooner or later we'll pass a point of no return. And that would be a tragedy for everybody. It'll be a tragedy for the students. It'll definitely be a tragedy for their families and communities. And it will be a tragedy for the country because we need those skills.
And what lessons have you learned first at a personal level and at a university and university overall? What have you learned from the experiences?
You see, I think all of us have to learn lessons here. I think that students have to ask the question, the hard question. What is the parameters of acceptable protest? Yes, you're entitled to protest, but what about the rights of others? And can you really violate the rights of others in the noble cause that you have? University managers have to look seriously at how we engage, whether we're being heard, but also how to manage and make the hard choices and trade-offs that have to be made. But government has to come to the party. You know, everybody carries on saying this. Well, why did the universities increase by 10.5% if they know? Well, partly because we can't sustain the university. The university is an expensive project. If we as a society want to have quality universities, we're going to have to pay for it. And if you're going to put somebody like me in there and you say retain quality and balance the books, then there has to be some trade-off. And unless you establish and give us the resources, the university has two sources of income: government subsidy and student fees. If government subsidy goes down, student fees go up. It's a logical thing if we want to retain quality. That's the debate. And the people who establish the parameters of what is possible and how to play the levers and how to structure the is government. We are, if you like, the people who implement it. But the people who establish the system's parameters is government. And so government needs to come to the party, university executives need to come to the party, student leaders come to the party. If we're going to fix this, we have to respond as a system. And obviously the other player that is silent here that we need in the party is the private sector, because they are the beneficiaries of the graduates. So we need all of them around the table to say, if we want to function as a country, we want to function as an inclusive economy, then we need all of us to come together to make higher education work.
But when you look at what the students themselves are saying and looking at what the universities are saying on the other hand, to me it looks like the trust between the two has completely broken down. Do you think it can ever be reestablished?
I think anything can be reestablished, provided you engage with a sense of integrity and honesty. It is absolutely true that the students have said that they're not being heard, that there is a trust deficit between themselves and executives in universities. That's true. But there's a trust deficit between them and government. There's a trust deficit between government and ourselves. There is a trust deficit that we're all confronted with. And if we're going to have to be able to put together, how do I heal my trust deficits? Very simply. I say, I'm open to open my books. I'm a public institution. Wits is a public institution. Its books should be open. Come together, bring student leaders, bring government leaders, bring the private sector, come see the books. If you think there's a better way to do this, retaining quality. If you think there's a better way to do this, I'm willing to hear it, and I'm prepared to make sure that Wits University's books are completely open. I've said that before, I say it again. You say this can be done in another way. Come show me. Because I've got some of the best minds around looking at this thing, and they're saying, unless somebody else gives some way, and if we want to retain quality, it's impossible to move. We were able to move in 2016 because government said, we'll come to the party.
Which brings me then to the question, we have a 0% fee increase agreement that is now in place, and we are not yet sure whether the shortfall or when and where it will come from. 2016 is just around the corner. Can Wits University survive 2016 with a 0% fee increase?
We can survive like all universities can survive with a 0% increase provided government comes to the party. That was the agreement on Friday. I want to be clear about this. We were very clear about this. On Friday with the president, it was very clear that government will assist the universities. Yes, the universities will look within themselves. They'll make cuts where they can. They will look at cost drivers. All of that was agreed to. But what was very clear was that the only way this is sustainable without compromising quality is if government comes to the party and assists in this process in a significant way. And I do not want us to miss that point, because if we do not do that, we will destroy the universities. And if we destroy the universities, then we will destroy the one university system that works on the African continent. And that would be a tragedy for everybody.
But what role would you like to see the private sector play in all this?
So I do think that private sector, since they get graduates, can come together. And I think that there are 2 or 3 ways that they can come. One of the things we speak into the private sector about is the possibility of whether the banking system can come and assist in the provision of loans. I think that that's a possibility. I think if we imagine it with the way we do it, I think we can create a partnership between government and the banks and the universities that allows that. That's one basis. There's a second. They give a lot of scholarships. And if we can coordinate much better the scholarships from the private sector and the public sector, then I think we need to start thinking about that possibility. There's a third possibility, which has been put by some parties on the system. By some political parties on the table, and that is whether we should be thinking about the wealth tax that is directed towards assisting universities to be subsidized. I think that that's possible. I think that that's something we need to think about. And fourth is better spending in the state and in the universities. We've seen this large amounts of money that are badly spent, and there's large amounts of corruption in both the public and private sector and in the university sector, as we know. What we need to do is, if we all learn to spend better, deal with corruption, we can find this money. But that's where our future lies, and that's what we need to do.
And very quickly, where to tomorrow?
Well, I'm hoping that the students say we want to go back. I'm going to go into my Senate meeting to try and ensure that we get everything back on track. I am focused on trying to get the academic program together, because if that academic program and the examinations is finishing, that is where our future lies.
Professor Adam Habib, it was a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.